Guys, welcome to episode 6 of Graceful Parenting. I'm Josh Thames. That is Reed Hillen. And with us today is Sandy Johnson. And we are so thrilled to have her as I think this is our first guest on Graceful Parenting. So this is a big deal. What an honor. Sandy is the community pastor at Campus Church. She is my pastor. I go to Campus Church. And she is a friend of both of ours from long, long ago. We've known her for a long time. And she is a really, really cool person just in general, but also she has 3 really, really cool kids that go to our church, and her and her husband, Eric, raised these 3 kids, and they are wonderful. Sandy, if you would, please tell us a little bit about your kiddos just to get us started.
Yeah, I agree that they're super cool. I think my kids are pretty awesome. June is 9, Dash is 7, and Elliot is 3. And so June and Dash were like just kind of naturally pretty compliant kids, and we thought we were really great parents. And then Elliot, our 3-year-old daughter, taught us that maybe we're not really, really the best parents ever. Just yeah, she's really fun, really, really fun, and really hard.
Yeah. In a lot of ways, and this is kind of one of the most fun things about having Sandy on. Like Sandy and her husband and me and my wife Caitlin are in a group together, and we they literally help raise our son, and we try to be in
control of their kids too.
Yeah. Right. And so there's a lot of connection inside of this. And so what's really fun to have Sandy on is not just to talk about like how you necessarily parent. That's a big part of it. But then also just like how you view parenting in general, especially through ministry and the way that you view how it impacts the way you view God and all of that kind of stuff. You were interested because Sandy was at our event live, and you were interested in a couple different questions that she had right there.
Yeah, Sandy kindly helped bring me to Atlanta a while ago, and we got to do that live event, which was really cool. And I was thankful to get to be there and be a part of it. And Sandy and Eric were in the room for our Grace-Filled Parenting kind of kickoff, I guess, is like our official first thing we've really done. And on the backside of that, Sandy, what reflections did you have from the room? And it's been a couple of months now, but what were the things that kind of jumped out at you from that time, and what are the things that you remember?
Yeah, first I want to say that it was a really wonderful event. I gained a lot from it, and I think it was really special for the parents in our church to come together and just get to have conversations about parenting together. All of that was a huge win for us. So I remember leaving there with tons of takeaways, but the thing that has really stuck with me over, again, it's been a couple of months. And so when I think back about it and I think about what kind of caused a change in my parenting, was the idea of belonging. I think you've talked a little bit in your previous podcast how we worked through the story of the prodigal son, and we, as a group, got to practice Lectio Divina and kind of put ourselves in each of the situations of the characters in the story. But you guys allowed us to put ourselves in the place of the father in the story. And it really led me to thinking a lot more about the idea of belonging for my children. I wondered, I think my children know that they belong no matter what, but immediately over the last couple of months, I've added things that I say. I wanted to make sure that, indeed, I think that my kids know that they belong.
Sure. Right.
But do I tell them that? I don't know. Right. Do they have that language? And so, at bedtime, we've started saying some different things that help make that really clear. Yeah. Elliot, she's 3, so I tell her, one of the questions that I ask her a lot is, how long will mommy love you? And she'll say, forever and ever. And it's very cute. And I love it. I love that sense that she knows that she belongs with mommy forever and ever, even as a 3-year-old. And so that has really stuck with me, that sense of belonging. So I in my ministry world, missional theology is the world that I live in. Yeah. And so there's this idea in missional theology that a lot of churches for a long time have structured the way church works as you believe and then you become a Christian, you become, the things that you're supposed to be after you believe. And then once you do that, then you belong to the church.
Right.
But in the missional world, they've tried to flip that on its head and say that's not really how it's supposed to work in the kingdom of God. You belong. You already belong. And when you belong to a group of people, as you belong in this Jesus community, you start to become more like Jesus because you're surrounded by it. In that process of becoming, that's how you actually believe. And so I this idea of belonging that I kind of picked up at your event I thought, okay, that's not just a church thing. That's how I want to parent too.
Yeah,
I want my kids to belong first.
Yeah.
And that is how they will become the kind of people that I want them to become.
Wow.
That's right. And I love that so much. It makes me actually really excited about that because obviously that's how it works. One of the things I think is interesting, Sandy, about this whole idea is I think most people in that room, and I think most parents that are like trying to like caring about parenting well, like would obviously, if I were to ask them on the street, like, hey, do you feel like your kids belong to you all the time? They'd be like, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sure.
Like, yes, they do.
Yeah.
But I think the thing that I think Reed and I have been trying to like kind of form out a little bit is this idea that like how do we communicate that to them? Do they know that? And like did we know that at times when we were growing up? And like was that communicated to us? And is there ways that if we did communicate that would help? And like as you say inside of like a ministry setting, what I hear you saying is like once people know that they belong, formation is available. Without that, it's pretty difficult, right?
Yeah. You're exactly right. Exactly right. Yeah, but I think the assumption that's what I really took away from the event was I took away lots of things, but the thing that immediately changed for me was the assumption that my kids know that they belong without me telling them that. Yeah. And so I needed to change that.
Right.
To tell my kids that they belong.
Yeah. I think some of the things that are jumping out at me right now are the verbal and then also the nonverbal ways that I communicate it to my kids. I had something with Henry a couple of weeks ago, maybe now a couple of months ago, where I was getting really frustrated with him. He wasn't doing what I needed him to do or was asking him to do. I remember the exact scenario, but I kind of grabbed his arm and I was like, hey, try to get serious. And in my frustration, I probably grabbed his arm way harder than I thought I was going to. That thing that happens?
Yeah, absolutely.
And he told me, I don't know, probably a week later at bedtime, we were talking and he goes, Daddy, when you do that, it really it hurts my feeling. It makes me feel real sad. And I was like, oh, wow. Yeah. You need to know that when I do that, I need to come back and tell you how sorry I am because I overreacted and I'm really sorry that happened. And so I think a lot about the nonverbal ways too, that I'm like allowing my body language or my, Mr. Rogers always used to talk about how the differentiation between adults are so big and kids are so small, and we'll never remember what it was like to be that small.
Right.
And that feeling matters a lot. That the power difference is very obvious to kids. And then the other thing that I'm noticing is I love the sign behind you that says encouraging wonder. And I am wondering about how this is not on our list of questions, but I'm wondering how wonder and parenting and belonging maybe belong in a sphere of connection.
Yeah, so at campus we do this training called Unique, or a version of Unique that's our own, that helps us kind of boil down our purpose and our life call into 2 words. And my 2 words are encouraging wonder. And so this is a very important idea to me, that's who I want to be as a person to all the people around me, but especially my kids.
Yeah.
And when wonder, I mean both just living in the sense of awe and wonder that the world that we live in is amazing. And also I'm encouraging curiosity. I want people to wonder about things. And so yeah, for sure, I think a part of fostering belonging is, especially in my children, not being so frustrated with their questions all the time.
Yeah, they have so many.
I have a lot of question fatigue, and by the time that the 50th question is asked, I don't have a lot of patience for it. But one of those nonverbal cues is my being able to foster their sense of wonder and why is this like this and why is that like that, and currently Ellie, my 3-year-old asks why about everything all the time. And finally, after the 4th or 5th why, my answer, which our theater friends will get this, is always just wait for phys ed, which is Matilda quote.
So good.
She has no idea what that means, but she has gotten to the point now where she knows that that's the end. That's the end of mommy having the patience to answer any more questions.
So she knows at bedtime that the answer is forever and ever and waiting on phys ed. Got it.
That's so good.
Yeah. But I do. I think that, man, welcoming their wonder is part of one of those nonverbal ways to let them know that they belong, for sure.
Yeah.
And like one of the things that we've noticed when we talk about these things, like on podcasts or in presentations or whatever, is that like when we speak about these things and like generalities, and we speak about these like in reflection, that we have all these things that are like, man, I really want to do that. I really want to do that. I really don't want to bring myself towards that with that particular attitude or that frustration, or I really want to encourage wonder or whatever it is. But the reason why it's so difficult is not because we don't have these images of it. It's because like in the moments, there's so much to do. There's so much that's happening that like it's really, really hard. And I think the thing that we've tried to name that as is fear. Like one of the reasons why it's hard to communicate what we want to our kids is because we have a lot of fear. And I don't even know if we always like necessarily consciously think that way, but I think that's one of the impediments of showing belonging and showing encouragement and showing openness. I don't know, like in some ways, Sandy, I'm interested in like if that's something that you guys have encountered like when you've parented, like it's just being like struggling to not show fear through some of the things you guys have to deal with your kiddos.
For sure. For sure. And I one of my practices that helps me as a parent sometimes, what I've realized for myself is that fear, like certainly there's this reaction that is a fear that my child is going to whatever. But also one of the fears that I've learned is this like fear that's more rooted in selfishness, the fear that I'm not going to get what I want. And that is a huge one. That's a huge one that I react out of, that I've seen more and more and so one of my practices as a parent is when Enneagram 9. So I, love to shove all my emotions, and like, I'm always a little bit angry, just right under the surface. It's bubbling right there. And so when I'm not getting what I want, I feel myself get angry. And so one of my practices is to, when I feel that, say out loud, I'm not getting what I want. And that really helps because it diffuses me a little bit, because I feel silly saying it. I feel like the child in the situation.
Right.
And I realize that this is true. Like what I want right now is to go do that thing. And what you're doing is preventing me from that because I have to make you do this. And so when I say out loud, I'm not getting what I want, it brings that fear to the surface, I think, and then helps me respond instead of react.
Yeah, we name that, and then we can recognize like we have to deal with that now instead of it just being under the surface of stuff.
Yeah.
I think
because no one knows. No, I don't even know yet as a 9.
Yeah. Right.
Until I said it out loud.
Exactly. Until it's out.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, this is like
real.
maybe the first time in podcast history that we have 3 9s in a podcast right now. I don't know. Like, I think maybe this is a monumental moment.
I know, and we sort of made decisions about what we wanted to talk about.
We did. It was
the fact
to
that we hit
ask me
record
what I
it
wanted
all.
to talk about, and I said,
How did we even record this? I don't know.
List.
It's amazing. Yeah, like I love that. I love that so much of like thinking about like the fear that I have for my kids and fear about like what they're going to be and all that kind of stuff, but also a fear that I feel. Oh man, like thank you for naming that, because I think Reed and I have talked about that quite a bit.
Yeah.
And how difficult that is for us. Reed and Sandy, one of the things that we have always been trying to figure out, and like this is in some of the episodes that we've talked about already, is this idea of like, how do we, like, what is it that particularly is difficult about that fear, right? And then how do we begin to manage it? How do we begin to like intentionally kind of communicate to our kids their belonging? And one of the places that we found inside of that presentation was in this idea around alignment. Right? There's maybe opportunity there. There's opportunity to show belonging, but I think there's also fear in it. I don't know. Like, I'd be interested to hear how you guys like think about in general what alignment is, and Sandy in particular, like some of the like the excitement and also hesitation inside of that. Like, what's that like for you?
Yeah. I remember asking at that event, like, somebody else asked the question that led you guys to talk about alignment, where, okay, so yes, they belong no matter what, but at some point there's a line in the sand. You can't do that. And so
Right.
where's the division between permissive and belonging? And so that's what we started talking about alignment. And I've, as you have pointed out before, great. I love this idea. I'm for it. What does that look like in the everyday moments? And so you're welcome, podcast listeners. I've tasked Josh and Reed with coming up with a list of the ways you do all the things in alignment. But
Reed,
really, give us some examples.
The reverse happened at the event because Sandy asked me, she goes, Reed, I need like 50 examples. And I said, you're gonna have to ask Josh. And Josh just said, Reed, you're up. So look at us kicking it around the circle.
I mean, but that's like, what we've learned about parenting though, is that it's not, it's an act of wisdom. All of, like most things we do in our lives, there's not a rule book or a how-to.
That's right.
But we're looking for wisdom, and we're thinking, okay, in this moment, in this time, what does alignment look like? Because what alignment looks like for very compliant June is not necessarily what alignment looks like for test it all Elliot, Right. And that makes it harder.
Yeah, as a former teacher, like parents don't like the language in the classroom is right. Like you're differentiating learning for your children.
Yeah,
it's like it's a differentiation of like, hey, look, it's gonna be different for this student or for this child in this scenario because like it needs to be.
Right.
And it's not that we're like making it easier for this other child. It's that like they just need different things because they're different places. And that's part of learning and growing is that it takes time. And it also takes an intentional teacher who's pointing at myself, who's willing to like be aware of that and then scaffold it in a way that is actually helpful. And I'm hearing you say that in parenting, like that's actually like part of the process is learning how to do that, learning how to differentiate for your different children because they don't all need the same thing. No. And so that's why like we kind of joke about coming with 50 examples because at the beginning of this, when our podcast used to be called something else, I asked Josh like 10 different times, like essentially like, hey, what are we going to post that's going to help like people? Like when are we going to start creating lists or creating like documents to send to parents? And he's like, we're not here to give advice. Mm-hmm. And so this idea of alignment is like different than offering advice because the invitation is to like loving your kids the best you can, which takes courage and creativity and discernment and wisdom that is often hard to find.
Right.
Yeah.
I love that. And I think one of the things that's difficult. So I think when we approach alignment, what I usually try to think through is how can I show them that I'm with them and be the one that holds boundaries and gives them structure.
Yeah.
Right. So, and I think what that has to do, like what that shifts away from is how do I stop them from doing what they shouldn't do into like the place of like, I got to guide them in the place they need to go. Right. So like they're probably going to do things that they don't need to do. I have to kind of give them guardrails around that. Like, I think it looks like this, as proactive, as intentional as we can be inside of moments. Can we be for them and say, hey, this, I recognize that you want to do this. I recognize this is exciting for you. I recognize this is hard for you, whatever it is. And I'm on your team and I will be the one that holds the boundaries. But like, I don't have to be the one that reacts against your like poor decisions. I can just be with you inside of the difficulties of the frustration you feel because you met this consequence, the direction that you need to go that you don't necessarily want to go. I can feel all of that with you and not necessarily have to be the opponent. Right. So it's not that I'm not the one that's holding boundaries or coming up with stuff. It's just that like I'm on your team. And even if you're mad about that or frustrated about that, like that's still my call. And now like I don't have to like react negatively towards you. It's so easy to say and so very difficult to do. So I really try to orient like how do I be with you and see what's coming and show you like the guardrails are here with consequences. The intentional thing we're trying to do is out there in front of you. How do I guide you that direction? So that's how we kind of orient like the language we put around alignment. My question would be, Sandy, as you think about that kind of thing, for your kiddos, as you think about what Ellie needs or what June needs or whatever your kiddos need, like what makes alignment difficult for you, and what is it that you would like to, like, I don't know, can we like workshop something and think about like
Yeah.
what does alignment actually look like in your house, you know?
I'm in the season right now where I have 1 month left of grad school.
Yes.
I am way overwhelmed, constantly feeling like I have too much to do.
Right.
So I am at my edge at all times. June is 9 and going to be 10 this summer, and just starting to kind of try on what it means to be a preteen, you know?
Right.
And so, again, super compliant child, really just wonderful, responsible, easy, but just like testing her boundaries a little bit. What a other night I told her to do something, and she that I told her like 5 times to do, and she hadn't done it yet. And she said something like, "Well, maybe I would do it if you'd quit yapping at me." Just like, not what I expected out of this child.
Right.
And there's just lots of little things like that last night we were going to dinner with somebody else, and so we had a babysitter coming, and I told her I wanted her to shower before the babysitter came. She said, "Yeah, that's not going to happen."
Oh man, so good.
These are the moments where I'm like particularly caught off guard because I don't expect this from this child. And I am already overwhelmed. And so my first instinct is to just like blow up a little bit.
Sure.
Or actually or shut her out. Just like, okay, I'm frustrated with you. I'm going to give you the silent treatment for a little while,
Yeah.
And neither of those are things that I really want to do with her, but I don't know help me. What does alignment look like where she can't talk to me or anybody that way. That's not how we talk to people. And also I know that you're overwhelmed and I'm overwhelmed. And so what do we do here?
Oh man. Okay. So first of all, Sandy manages this about as well as anyone I've ever seen. And I think Eric, her husband, does. They do such a good job with their kids. And so like we'll level that like right off the bat. And it's so good. I just want to make sure that you hear that like the other night I asked Jonas to hop in the shower and he was like, not gonna happen. And like just rage boiled up inside of me. Like just immediate, like that's what like immediately rose. And like so this is like the question in front of us is like when they react poorly, right? When they react in a way, like, especially in the moments. So we have all these ideas of like how we want them to behave in general, but like when they react poorly in the moments, like how do we be aligned, right? And I think like the answer to this question, I'm going to push back towards you, Sandy, in a second. Like I would love to hear like how do we help create like alignment and connection and belonging when people are not at their best, right? Like this is how I'm trying to really think about how kiddos can be humans. You know what I mean? Like kiddos are just not always at their best, right? And so we can expect them to be human. I think what I would love is to have a thought process prior to these moments to begin to say like, when they don't react well, I do not have to be excited or like thrilled about this. I do not have to like enjoy them or be like, yay, you reacted poorly to me. But instead being like, I am disappointed in that reaction. And like, here's what I expect that next reaction to be. And so that like, I don't know, like the idea of being able to like walk through it in my head and be able to say like, that's not the correct reaction. I will give you another opportunity to react well. And if we don't react well out of that, here's the consequence of what it could be. Right. So that's like best case scenario of being able to like, it's the idea of being able to like corrective action. I don't know, like what would that look like? Like how would you manage that, Sandy, in a way if you were nailing it?
Yeah, if I'm nailing it, yeah. I like that. And I'll say it like with my 3-year-old, that's kind of a pattern with like, again, when I'm not caught off guard, when she kind of tells me to do something instead of asking politely for it, my response is always, let's try that again. And that's it. Like, it's kind of I don't even think about that. That's just my response. Let's try that again. And then she knows that to say it in a different direction.
Right.
But I hadn't thought about doing that with my older children so much. And I love that. I love the idea of saying, June, I don't know if you meant to be disrespectful just then, but let's try this interaction again. June, I would like you to take a shower before the babysitter gets here. and then, I might even give her a third try with the consequences.
Yeah. Right. I love this. I've seen Eric and Sandy look to their kids at various moments, Reed, and say things like, "This is not your best," which
Yeah,
is so good. And I've like stolen that. I
yeah,
stolen that. I think it was Eric. I heard that's not your best, man,
yeah.
and like being able to like help
I
orient
like
Jonas
that.
with that, like you know.
Yeah,
So like, wait, I don't know. Thinking about like just those reactions, it's
I love
fantastic.
I love that whole thing because I didn't have to do anything, and because I learned a lot. And I heard Sandy at the beginning saying, "I either feel things that are too big or too small."
Hmm.
Which is all or nothing, right? It's
Yep.
a total, zero sum game in this moment where
Blow
I'm
up
either
or
gonna
shut it
I'm
out.
gonna like palm you by your head and take you to the shower, right? Or I'm just gonna walk away and freeze you. You're gonna feel the cold, the coldest this shoulder's ever been. Like those are my
Yep.
options. Is my reactive stance. And then
That's
I'm hearing the
absolutely my
process
reaction.
being like alignment looks like me having intention and purpose in my parenting enough to say, because you belong to me, I'm going to choose something different. And it's going to sound like this, right? And it doesn't mean there won't be consequences in it, but it does mean that I'm not going to have to be too big or too small. I'm not gonna model that for you. It's gonna look like these things. And I think that's a beautiful picture of that next phase in through graceful parenting into alignment and what it might actually look like, kind of boots on the ground or in
Yeah.
in practice.
Yeah. Yeah. And then you guys talk about this a lot, but when we get it wrong, repairing.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
pretty much every day this week, I've had to tell one of my kids, Mommy is overwhelmed. This is not about you. What you did then it wasn't about you. I'm overwhelmed.
Mm.
And I value your questions or your whatever it is.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But here's what I need right now. And so
Mm.
and an apology,
Mm.
So that repairing, I think, is probably the best thing
Yeah.
that we can do.
And I hear so much humility in that because um, if you grew up in homes where there wasn't ownership by the parents when they messed up, it can be jarring to hear that a little bit. And I don't know if there are listeners that have that where like if you grew up in a house where everything was always your fault as the child, to hear that a parent is telling a child, "Hey, I messed up and I want you to know that I'm sorry," might feel like weakness or something. Like you're letting your kids walk all over you, and that's not the case. It's actually a model of great courage and humility to say that like when I do mess up, I'm going to show you what ownership looks like, and maybe even radical ownership,
Yeah.
because the power dynamic does look like this.
Right.
And I'm going
Yeah.
to step down from that power dynamic. I'm going to show you what I think God's love actually looks like,
Yeah.
and then we can wonder together about what repair looks like.
Yeah. I absolutely agree.
Yeah.
Sandy, we'll get you out of here on this, and I
Yeah.
just I'd love to hear a little bit about. In a lot of ways, what I would love people to know about you is how you approach ministry, and I just because I think I always appreciate the way you approach how you minister to our church and to the people that you meet,
Hmm.
and the reason I'm connecting that to parenting is because I think that is how we like to think about how do we parent our kids,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah,
Like
for sure.
how do we guide them towards, how do we pull them towards? It's usually not through opposing. It's usually not through like reacting. It's usually through intention. And so I don't know. I see that so much in the way that you do minister to people. I'd just be interested to see if that ever overlaps for you. If those kind of things do merge inside of your head.
Oh, I mean, constantly. I think I'll try to say this in the simplest way I possibly
Sure.
can, but the way that I think about God is that God is this trinity of love. And so the Father and the Son and the Spirit love each other so much. And out of that love, there's this outflowing love creates because it's just, there's not enough space to contain the love. So it constantly creates. And so we get creation
Hmm.
and the Trinity invites us to participate with the love of the Trinity. And that's the whole biblical story is the Trinity inviting us to participate with love. I
Yeah.
think that's what parenting is. Eric and I, we loved each other so much it overflowed into we wanted these children to share our love with.
Yeah.
And so yes, all of the ways that I think about what God is like, I think is what we get to model as parents and what we hope to be like as parents. And we don't always get it right. That's the other part of the story is the Bible is people participating in the mission of God, but more of the Bible is people failing to participate in the mission of
struggling
God.
with that, right?
Yeah.
Right.
And so, yeah, like again, this is this act of wisdom to figure out what the next way we redeem and participate in what God is doing in the world and with our children, and how do we bring them along with that? How, in the same way that God is inviting us, we're not trying to tell our children what to do or make perfect little things that do perfectly. I'm just trying to invite them into a life that we think is good.
Yeah.
And I think that's what God's doing for us.
Yeah. I love that. I knew you were going to say that. I've heard you say that multiple times. And so I love that image as we think about graceful parenting and we think about the father inside of that. Like, the reason why he was able to not react at it through fear or through need or whatever it is because what overflows from him is consistent love. Yeah. And so the idea is that, like, when we are parents and we are frustrated or human or just normal, but what seeps out through us constantly is our love, right? And that stuff is really what forms our kids. I don't know. So I love that image. I think that's really encouraging and purposeful for parents to hear. Yep. I really, really like that.
Me too. Thank you.
Yeah, me too.
Thank you very much,
guys. I think it's episode 6 of Graceful Parenting. Sandy, thank you so much for being a part. It was super fun.
Hey, can I end with this liturgy that I read the other day that I've been praying, because it's just really beautiful. This Every Moment Holy, and they have liturgies for all kinds of things. This is a liturgy for a moment of frustration at a child. I have prayed this one lots lately. Let me not react in this moment, O Lord. In the blindness of my own emotion, rather give me, a fellow sinner, wisdom to respond with a grace that would shepherd my child's heart toward your mercies, so equipping them for the hard labors of their own pilgrimage. Amen.
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 That's fantastic.
Yeah. That's Kate Bowler, is that correct?
No, this one is, I don't know, Every Moment Holy has a bunch of different.
Lots of different ones. Gotcha.
But yeah, that. Fantastic.
I would love for that to be the prayer that I pray all the time.
Wisdom to respond with grace that would shepherd my child's heart toward your mercies. Yes, please.
Yeah. Fantastic.
That's some good words right there. That's exactly what I need to hear. I think it's a lot of what a lot of parents need to hear. So thank you for that.
Yeah, you're very welcome. Yep.
Reed, it's gonna be tough to top, buddy.
It's gonna be tough. Yeah, I don't know if we're gonna get any more guests ever, but like,
maybe it's one down to Sandy.
We have a hard time.
You do. I can't wait to hear other people's stories and.
No. Yeah. We do appreciate it though, Sandy, and we will we'll see you guys next week.
All right. Thanks for listening.
Thanks, guys.
Bye. Thanks, Sandy.